Good afternoon, students. We are going to discuss evaluation of the problem. In our previous session, we discussed definition of the problem, statement of the problem, operationalization of variables, and next this evaluation of the problem, which we are going to discuss today. It can be said that a researcher should ask himself or herself a series of questions before you undertake the research work or before taking up research task. The questions should be helpful in evaluation of the problem on various criteria. All such questions must be answered affirmatively before the study is undertaken. So, what are the questions that we should ask? Like, is the problem researchable? The problem that I am going to continue with, is that researchable? There are certain problems that cannot be effectively solved through the process of research. A researchable problem is always concerned with the relationship existing between two or more variables that can be defined and measured. So, the problem should be capable of being stated in the form of workable research questions that can be answered empirically. So, the first thing that should strike a researcher, is my problem researchable? Because it is always concerned with the relationship existing between two or more variables which can be defined and measured. Second thing is the problem new? There is no use in studying a problem which has already been adequately investigated by other researchers. So, a researcher should avoid such duplication. It is essential to examine very carefully the literature available in the field concerned. The problem should be selected only when you are convinced that it is really a new problem and researchable, which has never before been investigated successfully. However, a researcher may repeat a study when he or she wants to verify its conclusions or to extend the validity of its findings in a situation entirely different from the previous ones. These are the conditions where a study can be repeated. When a researcher wants to verify its conclusions or to extend the validity of its findings in a situation entirely different from the previous ones. Is the problem significant? The problem should be such that it is likely to fill in the gaps in the existing knowledge, to help to solve some of the inconsistencies in the previous research, or to help in the interpretation of the known facts. The results or findings of a study should either become a basis for a theory, generalization of principles. Besides, they should lead to new problems for further research or have some useful practical applications. Is the problem feasible for the particular researcher? A research problem may be researchable, new, or significant. It may be new, significant, researchable, yet not feasible because of like research competencies or interest and enthusiasm, financial considerations and feasibility, administrative considerations, time. So these are the some things which should be considered carefully, like competencies. The problem should be in an area in which the researcher is qualified and competent. If you want to explore something which is not your area, which is not your area of interest, then chances are that you won't be able to carry out your work effectively or efficiently. So, a researcher must possess the necessary skills and competencies that may be needed to develop and administer the data gathering tools and interpret the data available for analysis. The researcher should also have the necessary knowledge of research design, qualitative and quantitative techniques of data analysis that may be required to carry out the research to its completion. Interest and enthusiasm. The researcher should be genuinely interested in and enthusiastic about the problem he or she is going to undertake for research. Should feel enthusiastic, should be interested, should feel motivated to know, to carry out his work. Next is financial considerations and feasibility. The problem should be financially feasible. The researcher should ascertain whether he or she has the necessary financial and temporal resources to carry on the study. Each project has a cost, particularly in the case of some projects where students are dispersed, like distance education. So the cost is an important concern in feasibility. It is important to estimate the cost of the project and assess the availability of funds. This will determine the project can be actually executed. Administrative considerations. In addition to personal limitations, financial and time constraints, the researcher should also consider the nature of data, equipments needed, specialized personnel, and administrative facilities that are needed to complete the study successfully. He or she should check whether he or she is able to get the cooperation from various administrative authorities for for collecting various types of data needed for research work. Next concern is time. Uh, Projects are a time-bound exercise. So most of us, if not all, are already engaged in more than one activity in at our workplace, at home or any place. It is important to assess the time required to complete a task or study. So it is important to assess when I am going to, by when. Besides the assessment of total period, it is necessary to identify the period of the year in relation to the nature of the study. Curlinger has identified following three criteria of good problem statements. First of all, a problem should be concerned with relation between two or more variables. It should be stated clearly and unambiguously in question form. It should be amenable to empirical testing. Objectives or assumptions about the problem. To make the research work feasible, delimit the scope of the problem, to establish the proper frame of reference. Now, basic characteristics of research problem. For research problem to be effective, make sure that it has these basic characteristics. It reflects on it reflects on important issues or needs based on factual evidence. It is being manageable and relevant. It's suggesting a testable and meaningful hypothesis, avoiding useless answers. Now, criteria for selecting a research problem that we have already discussed, like personal inclination, resource availability, relative importance, researcher knowledge, and practicability. So, in this session and our previous sessions, we discussed the issues related to selection, definition, statement, and evaluation of research problems, along with various concepts about research, like characteristics we also discussed. And to select a research problem, we may depend on various sources like our personal experiences, we discussed it, sources of problem, criteria of problem, characteristics of this problem, existing. So to select it, we may depend on various sources, which we discussed in this session. Our personal experiences, existing theories in the field concerned, or a research problem should contribute to the existing body of knowledge and lead to further research. It should be testable and feasible. In our next session, we will discuss variables, a new topic, variables.